Hey, what is up, guys? It is Slick here, back again with another video. And in this one, I've got my friend Gavin joining me from downstairs. We actually live in the same apartment here at UNC. So anyway, we're going to be talking about Spider-Man PS4. Namely, we're going to be talking about the side missions in Spider-Man PS4, and we'll talk a little bit about the open world, but we're going to have actually a separate video on that. I've decided, we were kind of talking about it, and one of the sections I'm going to pull out that you see here, I'm not sure which one it's going to be yet, but one of them is going to be replaced for the open world. So we're going to talk mostly about the side missions that are in this game. So Gavin's a good guest to have on because you have 100%ed both games, correct?
I have.
I actually have not. Full transparency. I have not 100%ed Spider-Man PS4. I have 100%ed all the Batman Arkham games, but Spider-Man PS4 I have not, but I have dabbled in some of the side missions. So give us a little bit of an overview on your thoughts on the Spider-Man PS4 side missions.
Yeah, so as far as the side missions are concerned, something that I really have to draw as a comparison to the Arkham games in a way that they have incorporated the side missions, one, into the main story, and two, into the structure of the open world. So what will end up happening throughout the game is you'll have your usual random crimes going on, but then at the same time, other ones are introduced as part of the story. Like the Black Cat stakeouts, you'll get a call from Yuri, and then she'll say, hey, we found this thing on a rooftop that we need you to check out. And so you go to that, and then that opens up a series of side missions.
Right. Yeah, I think that looking at the side missions for both of these games, they both have their shortcomings, and they both are somewhat similar in many ways. And when I look at Black Cat, we're getting her DLC in a few weeks. I would have really liked for her side mission to actually be the DLC package that we're getting, insofar as there's cutscenes, there's a little bit more of a plot to it, and it's not so laborious, and you feel like, this is with the Arkham games too. I'm not saying that it's just Spider-Man. You feel like you're going from one place to another, beating these people up, going here, going here. There is a few interesting side missions, though. One of the highlights that I played was where you're working as a private investigator.
That one was a lot of fun, especially whenever they utilize their 3D interiors.
Yep.
And what you end up doing is crawling on the side of a building and taking pictures of them as they're drawing out their plans for a heist. That one was really cool.
It was really cool. Looking at some of the other side missions, though, you have the crime pop-ups, as we would have in Batman Arkham, but it's a little bit different, because in Batman Arkham, you kind of just beat up anybody that you see, because everybody's a bad guy in the map, whereas it's not so much like that here in Spider-Man PS4. But kind of similar in terms of the roaming, popping up villains that you can go and beat up.
Right, and this is its greatest strength and also eventually its greatest weakness, if you ask me.
I think you're right.
What ends up happening is, if you've 100%ed the game, you'll go around and you'll have several different factions that you'll have to fight against. And this is full spoilers, of course, but you start out with random thugs, and then you move on to fighting the demons, along with the leftovers of Wilson Fisk's men. And then along with that, you're fighting people who are part of Silver Sable's unit. And then lastly, you end up having to fight prisoners who have broken out of Rikers and the Raft. So, and it's really nice that you have that level of enemy variety throughout the side missions. But once you complete a certain number of them in each district, if I'm not mistaken, it's 5, you just have to resort to fighting random thugs again. And it would be nice for Insomniac to be able to patch those in the next update. Like maybe occasionally you'll find one of them, and something that I do appreciate is that you can go back and recomplete the other bases that you've already done throughout the game. So if you want to fight some demons again, you just have to go to the location, press a button, and bam, you're in the warehouse again.
Now, give us your thoughts on some of the more story-oriented side missions. So, for instance, I thought one of the highlights of Batman Arkham City would be the Hush side mission, where we actually get to see, we're doing these somewhat seemingly laborious tasks. We're going around and investigating the deaths and murder. It's interesting, and there's not too many of them, so it doesn't bog you down too much. But at the end, you get this rewarding kind of cutscene where we're interacting with Hush, and, I thought that was a great side mission that has a relevant story. It foreshadows Arkham Knight. Unfortunately, that build-up didn't pay off in the game all too well, but actually, in Arkham Knight, I did really enjoy the side mission where, we think that Bruce Wayne is in the tower, and it's actually Thomas Elliott. I thought that was good, but they could have expanded upon it more. But anyway, give us your thoughts on Spider-Man PS4's, story missions. How do they incorporate Black Cat and these other characters, into the game?
Yeah, so I think, talking about how the actual side missions themselves are introduced as part of the story, At that point afterwards, though, they just kind of branch off on their own, and you kind of have to, for lack of a better word, it is a little bit of a grind. But for example, with the Black Cat ones and even the Pigeon ones, there's not as many as you would think. And so the ones that you go to the different locations, it's not like you're constantly having to worry about, I got another one to do until, so on and so forth. Right. But what I do like about them, though, is that the side missions just exude character, whether it be, getting bits of exposition on Black Cat and Spider-Man's previous relationship whenever she leaves you voicemails.
Yeah.
Or whenever you're catching Howard's pigeons and you just give him a quick call over the cell phone and he's talking about how they used to belong to his wife. It's cute, for lack of a better word. It's just, it just exemplifies a lot of why we love Spider-Man. He's just the friendly neighborhood type of guy. And that also goes for the collectibles and the landmark photographs that you can take. You can tell, whenever you take a picture, he's very familiar with, where he lives. And then whenever you find a backpack, it's just constant fan service. So it makes it worth the time and effort.
Yeah, and including the Spidey Squad backpack. Did you collect that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. Evan was telling me about that the other day before we started recording the video. I actually haven't found it yet, and he told me where it was. I already forgot.
I saw his YouTube reaction to it. That was,
oh, did you? I haven't seen that yet.
Fantastic.
I'll have to check it out. So, talking about the Batman Arkham side missions a little bit as well, in terms of how they incorporate the villains into the main story, sometimes a lot better than others. In Arkham City, they did a much better job of this. Arkham Asylum didn't really have side missions, besides Riddler trophies. Yeah. Arkham Knight, they didn't do all that great of a job, really, because you have, those Two-Face bank heists, and Penguin has his little, armament places.
Yeah, overall, they all felt very separate from the main story.
You're right. Now, there also were missions that did feel somewhat related, where you're destroying, militia outposts, because you feel like you're taking the city back.
Right, yeah.
It's a little bit more relevant there, but some of the villains, they did not do an excellent job of incorporating them into the side missions, I would say.
Yeah, I feel like and something I do like about the game is that once you beat Arkham Knight, there is this, there is the revelation to everyone that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And depending on when you complete those extra side missions, it can actually change the dialogue that you get with those respective villains, which I thought was a neat touch. But outside of that, they didn't really do much to incorporate the side missions into where you were in the story mode so far and how the events of it have affected it.
Right. And, going back to Spider-Man PS4 as a whole, the backpacks remind me a little bit of the Riddler trophies without being so laborious.
Right.
The Riddler trophies, and one thing that I noticed about the side missions in general in the Batman Arkham games, they tend to be a little bit more puzzle-oriented, especially the Riddler trophies. Whereas in this game, the puzzles are more a part of the main game. Right. I thought that they were terrible throughout the main game with those computer...
The circuit things.
I thought those were awful. And that's just my opinion, though. That, of course, isn't a dash to this section because they're not side missions. That's a part of the main game.
Well, that's a little aside. They were bearable for me. I actually... I kind of got on a roll of using them, and I was, constantly do.
Were you good at them?
I got pretty good at them by the end.
Yeah.
But then once I started a new game just to get another feel for the side missions for this video... I held down the skip button every time that I went to one. Yeah.
Yeah, towards the beginning, I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. They're not hard or anything. And then they started to get crazy. And I'm not saying that they were difficult, but it's just I don't want to sit here and spend, longer than 10 seconds figuring this thing out. Let's get along with the story. And especially because they're at some of the best moments in the game where you're having exchanges between Pete and Otto, Yeah,
exactly. And he's finding out just how much the neural interface is affecting Doc's condition, and we got to take a break to do a puzzle.
Right. So what are your highlights of Spider-Man PS4? As you said, you were revisiting some of them. You have 100% of the game. What are the highlights and what are the weak points of the side missions?
Highlights of the side missions, I would say a lot of the ones that you said are kind of standalone and more story-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Like the private investigator one, or I actually replayed the Screwball one this morning.
Yep.
That one was pretty funny, pretty timely too. It also gave you a good chance to, also explore the city and stuff like that, and just kind of find neat ways to be able to take pictures to accomplish your objective. Another one that I really liked was the one where you're helping out the Empire State University student find his friends, and he gives you just a random picture of somewhere in the city, and it basically relies on your familiarity with the map so far in order to find that location.
Yeah, that's interesting, I mean, it's a huge map, there's no question about it. The open world is massive in the game. But looking at, missions like that, I think that those are some of the strong points of the side missions. What would you say was probably the worst side mission in the game? The pigeon one, to me, it's the weirdest one, but it actually might not be the worst. What's the worst?
It's not that bad, but
okay.
I would say, in concept, they're fine, but the base missions, no matter what faction you're going up against, they are all going to play out the same way.
4 waves, right? Is that what you're saying?
I think it's actually 6.
6 waves? Okay.
Yeah, 6 waves of bad guys. The first you can take out completely stealthily, but at a certain point, they just force you into combat, which I kind of wish that the game would let you stealth more, because there was a pretty, decent system in there if you wanted to do the whole thing in stealth.
Yeah.
And the only one that... this is, kind of more of a personal nitpick, but
sure.
All of them were outdoors except for the demon ones, which are in warehouses. And in the warehouses, that allowed you to do the web yo-yo if you wanted to get a better vantage point of, where you wanted to set your traps and stuff like that. But yeah, they all played out the same.
Yep.
If each faction had a very specific, layout of how their bases would work.
Oh, interesting.
Then... that would work. And they did do a decent job of separating it, where usually, the, militia checkpoints would just be at random points throughout the city. All of the demons would be in warehouses. The prisoners would usually be, setting up near abandoned buildings and stuff like that. And
Fisk's people are on the skyscrapers a lot of the time, aren't
they?
Yeah,
on construction sites, because that's, tied into his, business.
Right. Yeah. Well, what I think would have also been interesting in that case would be to actually implement some system where they're different, where it's not just like the 6-wave formula like you mentioned. If they found some way to differentiate, the Mr. Negative people to the Fisk people, that could have been really interesting. So, what do you think are the strengths and weaknesses of the Batman Arkham side missions?
Unfortunately, it's been a while, actually, since I've gotten to play Arkham Knight. And that's probably going to be the closest basis for comparison that I'm using here.
Yep.
Just because that's where they are the most similar, and that's where the side missions became their most diverse, so to speak. But I think it's become kind of, a running joke almost that it's notorious. The Riddler side mission is specifically just because of the 243 trophies, for example, in Arkham Knight that you had to find. As you said, some of them would be, very puzzle-oriented, and they kind of gave you, going to quote EA here, a sense of pride and accomplishment for finding. But then, there's also the ones where, like you said with the militia checkpoints, I feel like they had a very similar problem to the bases in the Spider-Man game.
Yeah. So, where do you land on this? Who do you think deserves to win this category?
This might just be because of recency bias and my own attachment to the character, but I would say Spider-Man.
Okay.
But
Why?
Even then, I think a lot of it has to do with just how well the side missions are placed in the open world and the context that they're given in the overall story. For example, in Arkham Knight, everything is brought up because of the chaos that the Arkham Knight and Scarecrow bring into the city. Whereas with Spider-Man, it kind of just happens over the course of time. Like, the prisoners break out at a certain point, and then, Sable comes in at a different point. And even without, the bases taken into consideration, you've got the other villains like Tombstone. I can't believe I haven't mentioned Tombstone yet. I really loved his little series, especially leading up to his boss fight. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm going to have to agree with you just barely. When I look at some of the Arkham side missions, some of them are very, very good. The Hush side mission was a highlight in City and Night. And like I said, even though they didn't do a great job on Night with the payoff, they still had a really good moment. It's shocked me, to be quite frank about it, where, he kidnaps, or he kind of hijacks Wayne Tower.
Yeah.
I thought that Lucius Fox, I thought that was a great, great side mission. And then you look at some of the other side missions. I mean, we have a Deathstroke boss battle in Arkham Knight that is
a tank battle.
it doesn't get any worse than that. And when I look at some of those, and then I look at, the Pigeons ones and Spider-Man,
right,
they're kind of quirky. They represent the character. They're fun enough. They're okay.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be completely honest here, I think that both franchises, if there ever is another Arkham game, both have a lot of room to improve, and I would like to see more story-oriented ones, excuse me. Especially, like you said, with some of those villains, in my experience, the best side missions are not the ones where you beat a bunch of people up, but they are the ones that incorporate some story aspect to these characters. But like you said, there might be some recency bias there, but I'm going to agree with you and say that Spider-Man PS4 wins this category out.
All right.
I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. My name is Slickmoth, and I will see you guys in the next video.